Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. It is really good to be with you here one more time for Calling from the Wilderness. This is, believe it or not, our 24th session, 24th of the ones that we have actually recorded and sharing publicly. So if you're missing out and wondering what has happened on the 23 before it, you can go back and look up, particularly on our YouTube channel, I think is where you'll find most of the resources. We'll be slowly, maybe not so slowly, adding, well, we're going to see what we do, but all the new ones are definitely being added to Spotify, so you can listen to those online as well through as kind of podcasts, or you can watch the videos on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you may find us. Derek, you want to say something?
If you're looking for our YouTube page or Spotify, it's under We Are Calling Pod. That's the title of it. Not Calling from the Wilderness or something like that. It's We Are Calling Pod. So you may get a little sidetracked if you search for Calling from the Wilderness.
And we cannot guarantee or confirm what you may find if you Google those things. So
it will not be us.
Pod.
I'm going to take you down a dangerous theological road if you don't stick to the straight and narrow we are calling.
Oh, straight and narrow. That's the only place I want to be.
Yeah. Well, that's where we came up with the name. Was John was calling from the wilderness to make paths straight or crooked places straight and hills low and that, and so we went with it. And if you don't stick with us, that sounds like a threat, right? If you don't stick with us, you'll be turned around and get into all sorts of terrible theological things there. Like we're always spot on. Yeah. I don't know what I was going to do that, but as always with this podcast, we are talking and it is meant for a discussion. So if we say something that you're like, I don't know about that, or man, I never thought about it that way, or I want to go deeper with that, or why don't you ever talk about this? Leave us a comment.
Yeah.
Leave us a comment on YouTube or on our Facebook or Instagram or whatever it may be, and we will do our best to respond to you. And
absolutely.
That.
Well, that takes us well into, as I said, this is our session 24. Which is our second week of looking at some of the life of Isaac. So earlier on, we'd done 4 weeks on the life of Abraham, but this week, or this month, we're looking at the life of Isaac. And last week, we were looking at the birth of his twins, his sons, Jacob and Esau, and kind of his role and his place in that. Today, we're going to be looking at kind of a later part of his life, kind of closer to the end of his life, when he's actually offering the blessing to his eldest son, Esau. And unlike what we're going to do in coming months, will actually be a chance to look at this from the different perspectives, but we wanted to kind of look at it from the perspective of Isaac and the experience of Isaac as a character. So we'll be looking at that today. For anyone who hasn't joined us before, or anyone who's looking for a little refresher, what we do is we pick a smaller passage of scripture, a chance for us to kind of look at something and just kind of sit and soak in it, see what God is saying to us in it and through it. So we read the passage once, and then we have some silence. We read the passage a second time, have a bit more silence, and then we start to look at if there's any words or phrases that have jumped out to us, and if there's any kind of thoughts or questions we want to throw into as part of the discussion. We start a 20-minute timer and see what we can kind of cover in that time. So buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Click.
Derek's in. He's in. So, Derek, if you want to read for us first today, our reading comes from Genesis chapter 27, and our verses, which you might find a bit strange, but again, for the focus on Isaac, I hope it makes sense. So, Genesis 27, verses 1 to 4, and verses 18 to 29.
When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, My son. And he answered, Here I am. He said, Behold, I am old, and do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, and your quiver, and your bow, and go out into the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. So Jacob went to his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat my game, and your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? He answered, Because the Lord your God granted me success. Then Isaac said to Jacob, Please come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, Are you really my son Esau? He answered, I am. And then he said, Bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate. And he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, Come near and kiss me, my son. So he came near and kissed him. And Isaac smelled the smell of his fragrance and blessed him, and said, See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you the dew of heaven, and of the fatness of the earth, and the plenty of grain and wine. That people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you.
When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him, My son. And he answered, Here I am. He said, Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. So Jacob went in to his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? He answered, Because the Lord your God granted me success. Then Isaac said to Jacob, Please come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Jacob went near to Isaac, his father, who felt him and said, The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy, like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, Are you really my son Esau? He answered, I am. Then he said, Bring it near to me that I may eat of my son's game and bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, Come near and kiss me, my son. So he came near and kissed him. And Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Well, Derek, you were getting emotional on your first reading. So, what was the?
Yeah.
No, Any words or phrases as we were going through this passage that jumped out to you?
Um, I guess probably when he says, "So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, 'The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau.' And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him." And just that, he wasn't sure, but he still went ahead and did it.
Mm-hmm.
And we should probably go over. We we had to cut some parts out, so we weren't reading for 2 hours. But Jacob's mom was like, Esau's out in the field. She's gonna talking to Jacob. He's gonna bless Esau. You should go and get his blessing. And so he put animal skin or animal hide on his arm, so he was hairy, and that's why he felt like
Yeah.
his brother Esau.
And wore the clothes of, I think he wore Esau's clothes as well. That part where he says he smelt him, and it smelled like Esau
Yeah,
as well. As you say, yeah.
it was an elaborate heist, shall we say?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm.
How about you? What about you?
Yeah, like I've always, ever since I was little, when he says that thing, the hands are the hands of Esau because they were hairy. I was like, how hairy was Esau? Like, that is incredible. Um, and yes, I am slightly jealous because I can imagine his beard was lush and full.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I think that ending, like the actual, like there's two times it says he blesses him before he gives him the actual kind of words of blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, I know it's not a word or a phrase, but that's kind of jumped out to me as well. Do you have any thoughts or questions you want to kind of put in the pipeline before we start the clock? Or do you want me just to start the clock so you can get right into it?
Let's just start the clock.
All right, here we are.
Because
Hit it.
I never thought about this until we were reading, and I know I messaged you and I'm like, this is what I'm going to talk about, but this is going to be completely different. But this, like, it just brings back memories of places I've been where, like in church services or something, where I feel good being in the church service, and but I know something's not right, something's off in the service,
Mm,
and yet I still go like what's happening, what's being said and stuff, or the energy of the building makes me feel good, but I
mm,
know what's being said or almost even the motives behind the church service or whatever are off, and
mm,
I've got that almost like Isaac's hesitancy,
mm, mm.
whereas something's not right, and it kind of reminds me of like TV evangelists, like the um, what are they called? For profit. What are they?
Oh, like the yeah.
Yeah,
The
name it and claim it.
the
Um,
prosperity gospel.
prosperity gospel, right? Where like you can watch that and you can feel quite good. Like, oh, he's saying all the good things. Like God wants to bless
Mm,
me with finances, and all I have to do is give him money, and God's gonna bring me out of whatever I'm in, this problem I'm
mm,
in, and everything's gonna get fixed, and I'm gonna just live the happiest, most joyous life ever. And it make you feel good, but what he's saying isn't what they're saying isn't really biblical, and it's off,
mm,
and it's almost like that thing, right? Like I feel good, and I see people worshiping, like the feeling of the arm, like I can feel people there and stuff, but there's the voice is off. There's something about it that is is making me reluctant to be part of this, um,
yeah,
and that kind of the experiences in my own life at
mm,
some healing services and stuff has brought me. It just reminded me of this, just the little bit that's off, right? Like everything, like I
mm,
felt good. I felt the arm. I felt good. Um,
mm.
but the voice, the one that was speaking in these services, wasn't God. It was someone else.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's completely different than what I told you I was going to talk about today.
You know, Derek, I'm nothing if not somebody who likes a good pivot.
Yeah. Pivot.
Yeah,
Pivot.
but I think you're right. Is like even with how we've like chosen to cut it, and the way the scriptures present the story, it's only for me, it's only ever been read through the lens of really trying to follow the line of Jacob's life. So, you know, all of these other characters are secondary characters to the one that we're supposed to be paying attention to, who is Jacob, because of what God does through Jacob and his line as that continuity of the promise and the blessing. And what is interesting, as you say, is like if you actually sit and look at, if we focus on Isaac as the main character, for example, which obviously is exactly what we're trying to do here, there is a very different tension than looking at Jacob the deceiver, but actually looking at the one who's being deceived. And as you say, there's this really frustrating thing that I'm very thankful for, and also, as I say, extremely frustrated about, which is that God seems to be okay with continuing to be at work through people and among people and in places, even when everything's not completely right. You know, and there's something about, you know, where, as I say, I'm grateful for it, because I know that there have been times, whether it's been, you know, my own heart or a lack of understanding or immaturity or any number of other things, that means that even myself may not be in that kind of right place. I might be that voice that's off. And yet I've also seen the faithfulness and activity of the Spirit in spite of that. I've, as you say, like there's been places where, you know, I think we've both been, where you're like, there's just something not quite right. And yet I also have felt and experienced and seen something of God in that, even though the voice wasn't, you know, quite lining up. And so I'm thankful for that, but at the same time too, it's frustrating, because it would make so much more sense. It would feel like the more intelligent thing for God to do, if God would say, look, you know, get all your ducks in a row, so that you know that it's right, that it's, you know, kosher, that it's ready, and then I'm going to come in, and that will be the kind of the proof and the authority, you know, when you've got, like, you know, the preliminaries all sorted. And that just doesn't seem to be. And again, looking at Isaac, I can understand, or I feel differently about, you know, as you say, like he keeps feeling that there's something not quite right, and yet keeps moving forward with what he believes he needs to and should be doing. And ultimately, you know, I believe, you know, through him, that kind of sense of, you know, in the midst of the uncertainty, trusting that God will be at work through it, even if he can't fully understand or fully, you know, fully kind of get it, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, I've struggled with this too, and the deceit, like Jacob the deceiver, and yet he's like in the Bible, you know, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, like he's up there, but he stole that. Um, and Isaac still continuing when he knows something's off, right? Like why his eagerness to have that done before he passed on
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
didn't like made an environment acceptable for someone to come in and deceive him. Like if something was off and he said, you know what, let's just wait till this evening, and Esau comes back, no problem, right? There, everything is done right. But his eagerness to have that done that day
Yeah.
made that
Mm,
made that possible.
mm, mm.
And
That's really good. That's really
Yeah.
good. I
Thank you.
remember one time in my life where I was really struggling. It was things weren't working out with immigration and getting back into the UK for training for ordination, and it's a big long story. But I just remember really struggling with it, and I was talking with my dad, and he was saying. He's like, we look at that verse that says, perfect love casts out all fear, as a sense of, just know that you're loved by God, and then you don't have to be afraid. But he was saying we could also look at that in the way that we make choices, that the confidence and comfort and peace that we find in the consistent, unconditional love of God means that we don't need to make decisions out of fear or in fear. And
Oh,
that was just really resonated with me as you were and reminded me of that when you were saying that, is that we do have that. Isaac says, when he calls Esau, he says, I don't know how long I'm going to live for,
yeah.
so let's get this out of the way. And then as you say, he's got these moments. It's just like, how long would have been different? Like maybe a couple of hours, if that kind of thing, by the time Esau kind of, got it all sorted. And he even says, this seems really quick. And Jacob, oh yeah, God just blessed it. It's all fine.
Yeah.
But actually, as you say, like he's so afraid that he's going to die without being able to pass on that blessing to his son, that he ends up doing something that he feels uncertain about. And that kind of question, I guess, for us is like, how often do we make choices in fear? Whether it's sorry, this might just hit. We might have everybody just turn the podcast off at this point.
Yeah.
But it's like that literally is the catalyst for the altar call of salvation, that you
Mm.
push somebody into a place where the one thing that they're more afraid of than anything in that moment is if they die, they might go to hell. They might not go to heaven, might not see their family again, might not.
Mm.
And you
You can
get
get
them
hit
to
by a
make.
truck on the way out of the building, so better get
Yeah,
safe.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the roof could collapse, and we could all be taken now. But
Oh
it's
yeah.
like Jesus says, it says, don't, like, perfect love is meant to cast out that fear, not be the catalyst to walk in it, right?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah. 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 And then also like with that is you're doing this only to get in heaven. It doesn't really have to change how you live your life now, right? It's just you say this, you get your passport into heaven.
mm,
You've done the work, but now it doesn't have to affect the rest of your life. You've just done it, and now you get in, right? Like
yeah,
it's in fire insurance, or whatever you want to call it. um,
yeah,
get in.
yeah,
But yeah, like I
yeah,
like or maybe because I'm helping lead the church here, but I'm thinking of things that I've led in my own life, like even youth events and stuff, where I have a feeling in myself that what we're doing isn't the best, or it's not. I wouldn't say it's not against God or anything, but it's not what
mm,
God is doing
mm,
in the neighborhood. It's not what God's doing in the community I'm in, but it's what I'm used to.
mm,
It's worked in a different community, and so I've got time and energy into this, and so I'm going to keep doing it
mm,
and hope that God joins instead of figuring out what God's doing and join that, right?
mm,
Like
mm,
I've done these. I don't know. I did a dance group in Saskatoon that went really good and got a lot of people saved. That must work in
mm,
bigger Saskatchewan, like smaller
mm,
place and stuff. Like
mm.
those groups must be the same. And so
Yeah,
I've got
yeah.
a feeling in myself that this isn't necessarily in line with God's doing in the community, but
Mm,
I'm so I've got to get it done. It's got to
mm,
get done that I just push through.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good. I guess that is the question, isn't it? It's like, I get, it's just that place uh, of what do we, or you know, do we actually believe? I don't know. I'm trying, like, I guess, do we have the patience and steadfastness of faith?
Well,
That says, right, like that says actually, we know that these things, in a sense, work, and
yeah.
we know that we can see results from this, but are we convinced, or do we believe that they mean that kind of longer stand of life? And the irony of, like, particularly this story, is that by giving his one son the blessing that belonged to the other, actually caused issue for both of the sons, caused, what, at least in his life, he never saw resolved, which was the fracture between the brothers.
Hmm.
um what did this put, like, a wedge between him and his wife, who helped Jacob actually do the deceiving, with the food, and with the skins, and, like, that kind of, when we're out of sync like that, as you're saying, and it might feel like, oh, but we know that, like, this isn't, as you say, this isn't because we're working against God, but we've known it, we see it, we know it can work, we know it can be good. But if it's out of sync, will that actually cause more detriment, or a stumbling block, or difficulty, or a fracture, where actually what we need to do is, like, hold that together? Like, what if, Isaac had said, look, I'm blessing you, my son, so let's call your mother, let's call your brother, let's call the servants, let's get everybody here for this moment
Hmm.
to be together. And that would have, again, as you say, like, that kind of patience, that holding out, just taking that one step back and saying, like, actually, this matters, like, again, as you say, like, youth events, how many times have I did I come back from a youth event, completely, like, changed and transformed? But actually, the things, and then I go back again next year, and everything, and it's just obviously another thing we can talk about. But the things that I remember that actually meant something to my life was ones that I shared with other people, not just the moment, but who I shared life with afterwards. So, the stuff that I could recall from, probably actually, in our own friendship, the things that I can recall that we would have shared at college, moments, and think to ourselves, like, actually, that means something, because it might have sounded the exact same, but the context and the alignment, or the resonance, was different, and was more harmonious
Hmm.
with God, with others, in my life.
Now, see, everything you're saying makes sense, and I would agree. But then you look at this passage, and Jacob doesn't
Yeah.
take his time. He doesn't be patient. He just goes and does what he wants to do, and it works out for him. So,
I think yeah, works out for him in that sense, like, the ends justify the means.
yeah,
The man who becomes Israel, and fathers the nation, the tribes,
yeah.
for
Like
but
Isaac should have waited and stuff like that, but Jacob, I guess, Esau went and did what he was supposed to do. Jacob went in and stole the goose and got it. And
this,
so,
yeah,
is there a
but
time that
this,
like
yeah.
patience and doing that and where God's working and doing that and calling everyone together that makes sense? And then is there another time where it's we just got to push forward? Like, is there an appropriate time where it's like, we're kind of stagnant. We just gotta pick a path and be a bull in a china shop and just get it done. Like, is there a balance between the two, or is it
Mm.
Jacob messed up and did something he shouldn't have, and we shouldn't do that? His Even though it worked out for him, it's not going to work out for everyone. There's no time for that.
But I think, like, so like, if we look, at both, like, Jacob and Isaac through this, is like, there was no reconciliation to them on earth, like, between them on earth,
Oh
right?
yes,
Like,
yeah.
right, like, so Isaac dies, with his youngest son having stolen the blessing from his eldest son, who he wanted to give it to. He dies without any sort of peace from that.
Yeah.
And so like that question, I guess, too, is like, and this is like part of the Psalms of Lament. How long will the wicked prosper? How long will those who seem to do the exact opposite of the commandments of God seem to be doing better than I'm doing? But I think I guess there's that thing about like,
Just because it looks like it's prospering on the outside doesn't mean it's actually prospering, or that it worked out on the outside doesn't mean there's not
yeah,
residual
yeah,
effects between
yeah,
relationships and inner self and that.
yeah. Well, it's like it's like those things like, I think, at least for myself, I look and I know my theology isn't always right, and I'm okay with that.
What?
I just yes, I know you'll
How
be
dare you
shocked.
be a
Yeah, 20.
Christian and question what you believe and
I,
work
I, I thought I thought I'd put that in, after we had 24 episodes, so that
Yeah.
you couldn't just run away from it.
Now that we got
But
you.
like, yeah, that's right, that's right. Where were they going with that?
Your
Yeah,
theology
so
still
like
look good.
I know that no, I know that there's times like where things aren't kind of fully in the right alignment for myself. And I'm speaking very specifically in times of leadership. And but I think I say to myself, oh, but that doesn't matter, because I know that as long as I push this through, on the other end of it, they'll appreciate what I've done, or they'll see that I'm right, or this will get working. We'll have the momentum, and then everything will kind of be able to carry on. And yes, we could have got here in a better way or in a different way, but this is the only path I've got. So let's kind of push it through. And I think like that simplicity of understanding what the value and meaning of life really is. It's like what would it have looked like for Jacob to have been blessed by his father, but not have been part of that wedge between his mother and his father, or that the brokenness with him and his brother. And because there is part of it too, like where like at least this whole thing, like I'm not sure if Jacob even wanted to do this, or if he felt like, I've Esau promised me his birthright when I gave him that bowl of soup, and mom seems to think this is a great idea. She's got it all figured out. Who says no to their mother? But it's like I guess that's the thing, is like, what when we look at the end, is like, it's kind of what we were talking about before, is like, if you look at blessings as being the things that you quantifiably have to show people that you're blessed, I've got significant reservations about, are you actually blessed, or is that actual blessing? But if blessing is about that kind of being set apart to be able to do stuff for people, with people, and of God, with God, then that's a very different thing, and it's not so quantifiable. And I guess that's the thing with Isaac, is like, blessing, I think, his son, and blessing him to be a leader of other people, to be somebody who, when you are cursed, they're cursed. If you're blessed, they're blessed. To be Lord over others, including those of your own family. There was something very kind of quantifiable for him about that. And what I feel like kind of gets lost for all of the characters in this is that depth of kind of relationship, and what would it have mean to be the family that was able to move forward in the way that Isaac wasn't able to with his brother Ishmael. He wasn't able to kind of see that kind of peace, and that reconciliation, and that blessing as a family together. And there seems to be as we talked about last time, that kind of the kind of friction between us and others, of whether it's siblings or whatever. But like that sense of like, what would it look like to actually find harmony and peace, and maybe in that sense of like the church finding it for once, where we say, look, we are all part of the same family, and it is not about any one of us kind of having quantifiable blessings over the others. This is about living in the life of God for the life of the world with each other.
It doesn't matter how you got here. You got here. And what are we doing together?
Mm.
Maybe. I don't know. Not saying pass or I worded that wrong because paths are important and experiences are important. But the all different paths, all different ways coming together, and we're on this road together. I like it.
That's 20.
I assume that was 20. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, you want to close us off?
Excellent. So next week we're gonna start with the first 4 verses that we've had today, that kind of call of Esau, but then we're going to look at into the second part will actually be when Esau comes back and the experience of Isaac in relation to his elder son. So yeah, do come back for that one. It'll be interesting to follow it again.
That's a little teaser trailer.
There you go. There you go. I'm working on being a bit more professional, not just like throwing these things out, right? You know?
Yeah.
Get there in the end.
Get the old bait and switch. Yeah. Okay.
Well, bless you.
Bless you.
And yeah. See you all again next week.
All right. Toodles. Have fun.
Bye.
Bye.